It's 10:08 on Phoenix FM, and right now I'm joined by Mr. Ikabongo Mwiya from PMRC. Mr. Mwiya is a research associate at Policy Monitoring and Research Center, PMRC, and this morning is joining me to discuss the 2024 post-budget analysis. Mr. Mwiya, good morning and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
All right. So to begin with, we want to know a little bit about PMRC. What is the Policy Monitoring and Research Center, and what does it focus on?
Okay, so we are a non-partisan independent research, and of course we work under the Ministry of Finance. We monitor, analyze public policies in Zambia. We aim to provide evidence-based analysis and recommendations to government so that policies that are generated actually achieve the goals that are intended to be achieved.
Great. All right. So looking at the topic of discussion this morning, which is, of course, the 2024 budget. Does the 2024 Zambian budget inspire confidence in its ability to address the economic challenges facing, ordinary Zambian people, citizens of this country?
Broadly speaking, the 2024 budget does contain some positive elements. We have increased allocation to key sectors of the economy. In terms of, for instance, the one that we have been talking about, I think that has been the main theme for what this government has done. We look at CDF. We focus on the issues to do with the job creation that comes from many other spending channels that have been increased, as well as social protection. We have some concerns, of course. For example, the budget may not directly focus on specific elements of, for instance, the challenges of inequality that is rising and so on. But we know there are some strides that are being made to try and ensure that we reduce poverty. Of course, if you're aware of the statistics that were released last week, we saw that the number has quite increased, and some of those things are being addressed in the budget. Yes, so you should be optimistic about the budget.
All right. You talked about one of jobs, like job creation. What is the economic significance of the government's plan, to construct industrial yards in Kitwe, Lusaka, as well as Ndola?
Well, so these yards have a significant positive effect on the economy. First of all, we have this space that is being created for businesses to operate. These yards could actually help stimulate investment, economic growth, and creation of jobs in those areas. And you may know that these have been selected, of course, primarily because of the fact that they are a hub for many youths seeking for jobs and so on. And we have a lot of opportunities that are untapped there. So I see it as a beginning, but this should spread to the other parts of the country. So additionally, we know that these yards could actually attract foreign investment, and this could help us diversify our economy as a country. We have been relying on mining for a long time, and this is one of the attempts that we are making to ensure that we diversify our economy in different sectors. Yes.
You've talked about, how you would wish, these yards can spread to other parts of the country. The places that they are intending to create these yards, Kitwe, Lusaka, it's because of maybe the mining areas. Like, which other areas in particular, other parts of the country, do you think, they can create this?
So, as it is, I think that every province has its own advantage or its own niche. You look at, we have Mansa, we have Kasama, Western and Southern. These are different, there are different economic activities that could be tapped from those different areas. But because of the limitation in terms of resources that we have, I think in a way we have just managed to secure those few towns, and then it will go to the other places so that we can identify. First of all, you don't want to have a situation where you have certain things that are dictated from the top, from the central government, without knowing what is actually obtaining on the level, district level or provincial level. So taking these industrial yards to those places, they locals will start to determine what exactly is affordable for them, what is available for them, what is accessible for them, and that can be turned into profit from that end. Yes.
All right. Let's talk about CDF. How much of the constituency development fund has been disbursed to constituencies so far this year? Have any constituencies received 100% or 75% of their allocation? Do you think increasing the CDF allocation for 2024 the best decision?
According to Mofni, Minister of Finance, just last month, I think the data showed that about 42% of the CDF had been dispersed to constituencies. This is significant, of course, to note that, of course, the release has not met in many ways the total expectation. And in a way, you see that there are some constituencies that have not received 100% of their allocation, and only 14% or so have received about 75% and so on. So you have no constituents recorded so far receiving 100% of that, but you have about 75%, which is 75% received for about 14 constituencies. Well, this data can keep changing because data comes and you keep updating that. But so far there hasn't been any record of 100%. And this could be some of the technicalities that the proposal by the minister in the speech last week to try and review the CDF policy. In a way, when we review the CDF policy, we try to iron out some of those challenges that come with disbursement and so on. Yes.
So, do you think the 2024 allocation, the increment of CDF allocation for 2024 budget, do you think is the best decision?
In a manner, yes. I know there have been arguments that some of these resources could be channeled to other things. For instance, offering subsidies for fuel and the staple food maize and so on. But for me, I generally feel it's a step in the right direction because you see a situation where the grassroots are the ones that are going to benefit. You have these projects, you have these different economic activities that are coming as a result of CDF projects. So it is a welcome move. In a manner, we want to see increasing CDF is one part, but also would like to see a situation where the transmission of funds goes to close to 100% as much as possible to all constituencies. But again, you have challenges within the same constituencies about approval of projects, appraising of the projects, what projects you are going to determine and how they will be undertaken. So the disbursement depends on the projects that have been approved. So these are some of the challenges, and I think there's a little bit of lack of awareness in terms of the locals, how to go about applications and so on. So some of the applications are not going through because they don't meet the standard, or there are certain things left out and so on. So awareness on the ground is and also limited capacity to undertake some of these projects by the locals. There are a number of challenges that you actually see with CDF. That's why I think a review is needed urgently so that we iron out some of these challenges. But all in all, what I can say is that it's a good move that it has been increased, and we hope that it continues to be so that we are able to see more development coming from the ground up. Yes.
Awareness, how best do you think they can improve in terms of making sure that people are aware about what's going on in their constituencies, and also about CDF allocations?
Well, there are many channels of communication that can be used. As we already know, strides are being made by government through Ministry of Local Government to try and educate people. So we have the Ward Development Committee members, and that team in itself is created specifically to try and educate the communities on what projects, how to identify projects, how to apply for projects, and how to use the funds that are being received from these for these projects. We have had a number of challenges. Of course, approval is actually another issue. Once you are approved, again, the transmission of funds is another issue. Like I've mentioned, well, there still is a learning process. We still have to improve some areas to try and move towards what we want to see. But essentially, for me, if we go back to the original question, it is a good thing that CDF has been increased, but it's now the management and the actual implementation of these projects that we want to see being done.
Apart from some of the challenges that you've highlighted, what gaps have you noticed in the implementation of the CDF funds, and what would you have hoped the government worked on as a matter of priority?
So this one may come as a bit of, I think, a repetition. I have mentioned that, well, the funds, there's a bit of transparency issues surrounding the funds and accountability. Although this is an issue that is, I think, even the president has spoken about, even the minister also mentioned, to say, well, people who are involved in any malicious behavior concerning the disbursement of funds and whatnot should be careful, because we are auditing this. So there is an issue of transparency and accountability. There are also difficulties to track how funds are being used. There are reports, of course, whereby funds are being given to individual cooperatives, and you find that what they applied for does not actually tick. So there's that lack of transparency and also a bit of corruption that we may see, especially on the people that are receiving these funds. Not everybody, but most of them. And you find that there is also a bit of mismanagement of funds. There are some projects that are being reported having been shoddy or not meeting the standard that was signed up for, and some of those challenges are still there. But like we were saying, we should be optimistic about CDF, because once we have a framework that attempts to iron out some of those challenges, we should be able to get ourselves running and be able to reach the goals that we want. So yes, like any other project or any other program by government, there are certain bureaucracies that do occur, and we have to ensure that those are ironed out. So issues to do with transparency, accountability, tracking of funds once they are dispersed to the individuals, whether or not you actually get the projects that you signed up for, or do you meet the standard that you expected, and so on. So those are some of the issues. Additionally, I feel government has not yet provided enough guidance to the constituencies on how to use CDF funds effectively. Again, it comes back to the awareness issue. But steps are being, like I mentioned, we are making efforts to try and ensure that this is being implemented.
All right. So I'm joined this morning by Mr. Ikabongo Mwiya, who is a research associate at PMRC. And this morning we are discussing the 2024 post-budget analysis. We'll take a short break, and when we come back, feel free to join the conversation. You can send us a WhatsApp message or a WhatsApp voice note. You can send it to 0978-895-895. Welcome back. This morning we are discussing the 2024 post-budget analysis, and my guest this morning is Mr. Ikabongo from research from a PMRC. Is a research associate. That's Ikabongo Mwiya. All right. So, what has the budget proposed, to address the high levels of poverty in Zambia?
Well, if you look at a number of issues, I think I'll first mention them generally and then try to go into details, especially the income tax. You have seen an increased allocation in protection programs. You have seen a jump in terms of social cash transfer. I think we have also seen issues to do with agriculture. There has been an increase in investment. I think some of the things that you see from the budget being proposed include investing in infrastructure, roads, the farm blocks. Exactly, those are going to have roads connecting them and power lines and so on. All those are attempts to ensure that at least food security is addressed. They will also have job creation through public sector and the private sector. I think one of the key things that the minister mentioned last time when we had the speech last week was the issue to do with job creation. This is central to ensuring that we fight inequality and reduce poverty. Another issue is promoting agriculture and agro-processing. One of the key things that we have seen from this budget is a very big increase, especially on issues to do with the inputs and ensuring that the farmers are able to get their inputs on time. That is another way that we are seeing that this government is trying as much as possible. It's also important to note that, like I mentioned, the payee, the income tax, you see the lower cap has been increased from 4.8 to about 5.1. This means that from anyone who gets below 5.1 now is paying zero tax, and then those who have the higher end where you have 37.5, it will now reduce about 0.5%. Now, in a way, you can see we are also looking at the side of the low income earners. By moving it from 4.8 to 5.1, it means they'll have a bit of space to spend. That is what it means exactly. So if you are a low income earner, then you have that space where you don't pay any part of your income towards tax. And then the higher end, of course, we're looking at maybe the middle income people that also are grappling with these costs and high cost of living, inflation, and the other prices that we have seen. So reducing it may seem very marginal, but in essence what you have actually is a very big effect in terms of the pool of income that people have to spend. So you are increasing what is called your after income tax, your take home. So the take home increases, then you can spend on consumption, you can spend on investment, you can make some savings. In a way, that is another aspect that I think is very critical. Yes.
Those sound
there are a lot of issues that I can talk about. The budget is quite interesting in terms of actually addressing some of these issues. You want to move the middle income people to higher upper income, and then you want to move people in low income to middle income. That transition in itself actually dictates that you are actually trying to reduce inequality and poverty. Yes.
Those somehow sound like long-term, solutions. They're not like some of the solutions that can maybe tackle some of the things that we are at the moment grappling with. So things to do with high prices of meal, or fuel, high prices of fuel. Okay.
I do not understand when you say long term, because once you comes January 1, then your income, anyone who's getting less than 5,100 will pay zero. If you were getting 5,100 or anything above 4.8 this year, you would, above that, you would actually pay. But now it means that people on the lower end now will be exempt up to about 5,100. So it's immediate. You will see your take home actually changing. The higher end, of course, we'll see that 0.5. But coming down to say, well, you will not see this immediately. Some of them will be immediate. Some of them will be medium term. Others will be long term. I understand, and I understand what you're saying, and I agree with you to some extent. Some of the measures that have been put in place may have, to take a bit of time for them to start showing, the effects. And this is why we have short-term, mid-term, and long-term measures.
Welcome back to the program. You can be part of this program by calling in on 226841, or you can send us your questions via WhatsApp on 0978-895-895. We are discussing the 2024 budget. That's the 2024 post-budget analysis. And my guest is Ikabongo Mwiya, Research Associate at PMRC. All right, so what measures are in place to promote responsible and sustainable mining practices and maximize revenue from the mining sector when we talk about, mining?
The question about mining, I would like to look at it from two sides. We have the big guys, the large firms, the Mpanes, the Konkolas, whatever. These are the big guys, so the large scale. Already our policies in terms of taxes do favor them. In a way, they offer an environment that is so conducive for them to continue operating. The second part of the question about mining for me is about things to do with the local indigenous miners, the artisanal miners, the small-scale miners. In a way, government could actually make as much as possible in terms of tax revenue from these small-scale miners if we found a way to formalize the small-scale miners. It's a very huge task. We have a lot of mining. It will not only help government in terms of raising revenue, tax revenue, but also it will impart so much in terms of the Zambian economy. We'll have a contribution from the mining sector where households who now have, government can create some programs in which they teach them or sensitize them on safe mining processes, how to identify minerals, how to map, how to practice health and safety programs within their mining projects and so on. So there's so much that could be done if we formalize the informal sector that is the artisanal small-scale mining. So the question about what measures government can do, I think it will be, for me, already the large-scale miners have enough on the plate in terms of incentives for them to continue operating. But for the small-scale mining, I think there's little that has been done, and I think that is one area that government could actually potentially get more, as much as possible. If you look at it now, we have so much mining activities in many places, such as Mumbwa, Mpika, Rufunsa. You talk about Solwezi and other places. All these mining activities are being undertaken by, in most cases, by the same small-scale mining who may not even have equipment. Government could create an environment where they have access to equipment, create an environment where they're able to trade and sell at the right market value. You extract your minerals and you sell it less than half the market value. And this is why we hear so many scandals on the market. So some of the measures, of course, to promote responsible and sustainable mining and maximizing government revenue, we want to ensure that, the act that governs the Mineral Act is set out in such a way that it adheres to environmental, climate standards that are set by the international community. We also ensure that we promote transparency, as well as monitoring and all the time checking and reviewing policies around mining, so that we are able to protect the small scale, to protect nature, and ensuring that they grow to the level that we want to see. So we want the indigenous miners to grow. We just don't want to see the big guys, the foreign direct investment that we receive through mining, to just focus on external individuals coming to extract minerals from here. We want to see also the growth of the small-scale mining into medium or large-scale mining from my end.
Let's talk about incentives which are available, to mining firms in Zambia to operate profitably. What tax incentives are available to mining firms to operate profitably here in Zambia?
So some of the taxes that we have, especially mineral royalties, tend to focus mainly on issues to do with the price, the international market price. So the tax will adjust or will depend on the international market price. So any movement, you don't want to squeeze them out. So you don't want to maintain it well. The tax is in such a way that it's responsive to the changes on the international market price for the mineral that is being traded. That's a very good incentive. Imagine you're selling a commodity and the tax that you pay is in line with the price on the international market. So you don't need to feel this burden over time. So you just pay what is due given the market price. So that's actually quite a good incentive for me. Another incentive you have in the mining sector is tax holidays that we do offer to some of these mining firms. And I think for me, like I've mentioned earlier, is how can we translate that to also incorporate the indigenous miners, the small-scale miners. That incentive in itself is right now the mainstay of the larger firms, not mainly touching on the smaller firms. So you want
this tax holidays, is it a good thing for?
Well, if you have so much competition within the region, you want to create incentives that also help you to attract foreign investment. And if you are too stringent, you may end up losing. We have issues to do, within our region. We have DRC, we have Angola, we have so many countries within our region that are also practicing what we do. So you want to create these holidays that you exempt them for some time, so that they can establish, maybe they are buying equipment and so on, so that they continue to operate smoothly. It's a good thing but of course government loses revenue through that, but it's an incentive to them to come and stay here. You have to remain competitive.
Okay, there's a voice note here. I'll ask you to wear the headphones. Let's listen to this voice note.
Good morning, Phoenix. This is Ems from Kabwe. And I'm just kindly asking for clarity. Did I hear you say that anybody who's getting paid less than 5,100 come January, they'll have a tax-free? Am I correct, or maybe I didn't get right? Thank you. Have a good day.
Okay, did you get his question?
Yes, his question is that. Well, there are tax bands. These are like brackets that you have. If your income falls within this bracket, then the budget as it is now is a proposal, and of course they will sit and iron out some of the challenges here and there, or issues arising and so on. But in essence, these tax bands mean that we are trying to make sure that your take home after your tax deductions is not squeezed out. So the implication of that proposal, initially it was 4,548, now it's 5,1. Essentially that's what it means. Your take home will be like that, yes, in response to that.
All right. Okay, so we'll take another short break, and when we come back, I want us to talk about the debt situation. We'll look at the external debt, especially to private lenders, after this short break.
Phoenix FM.
Welcome back to the program. Feel free to join in the conversation. It's 226-841-0978-895-895. We are discussing the 2024 budget, and in the studios with me is Mr. Ikabongo Mwiya, who is a research associate at PMRC. All right, so what has been proposed in the budget to address Zambia's external debt to private lenders? Mr. Mwiya.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for this question. We have seen that, even before I touch the budget, we have seen that government has been, through the president himself, been moving a lot of times, making movements to China, especially where most of the bulk of these lenders are. The idea is to, when you negotiate a deal country to country, it's quite easy because you can discuss as Zambia and another country which is your lender. And looking for commercial lenders is a different case. You need to, whereby you can have, for instance, an agreement with one country to the next. With the commercial lenders, these are private lenders. These are people who put money there. Maybe it's a mutual fund, maybe it's a pension fund, or something like that. So in the budget, we have seen that following what was done in terms of restructuring the budget earlier this year, we have seen that the aspect of commercial lenders hasn't been done much. And what I can just cite from the budget is the fact that we have seen limited spending and also borrowing. If you want to offset the debt, if you want to ensure you pay off the debt, you need to ensure that your funds are available, so you don't have to default. And this budget highlights some of the measures that limit government spending so that we have enough resources to channel towards repayment of debt, as well as limiting how much we borrow in the current year, in the fiscal year that the budget is running. I think one of the things you can see is one of the key mentions of the minister was that for the first time in a long time, our budget is being funded, a large portion of it by domestic resources. In a way, we are trying to move away from being over dependence on external funders. So the portion of what is coming from within the country is actually quite huge, relatively, of course. And this in itself is an indication that we are trying to reserve some resources that can be channeled towards the repayment of the debt. There are many other measures that have been put, of course. If we grow different sectors, we are trying to ensure that economic activities increase, and from these economic activities we are able to raise as much revenue to pay off part of that debt.
All right. All right. Pay-as-you-earn threshold. What impact is the increase in the pay-as-you-earn threshold likely to have on Zambians? This question has come again. You touched on it earlier on.
Well, thank you. I highlighted that we want to see a prosperous Zambia, and to be able to increase the level of equality. You want to fight inequality, you want to reduce poverty, you want to improve the livelihoods of households and individuals. And from what this budget has provided, you see that the lower cap, of course, has been raised from 4.8 to 5.1 that I mentioned, and then knocking off a 0.5 from the 37.5. And in itself, you are trying to say, well, can your take home be increased so that you are able to use your resources for other things? It's not sufficient, but if you look at the average wage, we're talking about 3,000 to 4,000. That's the average wage, and the average cost of living for a family of 5 is around 9,000. So you want to ensure that people afford these commodities that are essential for their livelihood. In a way, the adjustments that have been made in pay-as-you-earn reflect that stride by government to achieve the movement that I've been mentioning, where we want to move people who are basically low income earners to a higher middle income, and then you move middle income to upper income or something like that. The idea there is to try and ensure that people have a bit more spending power, because the cost of living has been rising. So when you exempt part of their income from paying tax, then you are able to allow them to afford or command more resources from their incomes. So your take home should increase, and essentially that's how the transmission works. You will be able to spend more. Yeah.
All right, as we almost winding up, what should be the takeaways from our discussion this morning, and overall, what do you think of the 2024 budget?
We should be optimistic about this budget. Coming 2024, we should be optimistic about it in terms of the different sectors that have been touched. We saw, I think, aspect of manufacturing being mentioned, job creation, the beginning of our topic, talking about the economic zones, or, those yards that we talked about, commercial yards. We talk about external debt, we talk about the taxes, those changes that have been made, the cash transfers, and so on. These are attempts to ensure that Zambians are able to cope and actually emerge out of the suppressing cost of living. Yes.
There are two questions that have come just now. One here says, good morning, Phoenix and the panelist. Does the tax exemption of 5,100 kwacha apply to every employee on their salaries? E.g., one is getting 10,000 kwacha. Is the 5,100 first exempted and the remaining amount taxed?
This is where we have the tax bands. It's just a small issue, actually. You have tax bands, a breakdown on how that is going to be. So in a way, the person knows the answer, yes. So your first part is exempted, then the other part is subjected to the next tax band, and so on and so forth. Yes.
The other question, almost the same line with the first question. Someone getting 5,000 kwacha will take home more than one getting 6,000 kwacha after pay-as-you-earn. Is it making sense?
Well, your take home will be exempt if it's below 5.1. So it depends on what your gross tax, your gross income is. So that question is a bit tricky, but in a way, it's a matter of what is your gross. And then from your gross, you can calculate based on the tax bands. Yes, that's what it means. But I wouldn't want to, unless they gave me an exact example, well, this is what it is, my gross is so much, and then you can try to calculate the tax band. But it's not as difficult as it seems.
All right.
Yes. Any income in excess of 5.1 will be subject to the next upper tax band.
All right.
Yes.
Your concluding remarks as we
Well, like I mentioned, I think in a way for me, we need to be optimistic about the budget. As PMRC, I think from the analysis that we have presented, it shows that we have a very instrumental budget that should propel us towards more macroeconomic stability, fiscal stability, and ensuring that we do not end up in a debt crisis like we experienced earlier.
Thank you very much for coming through.
Welcome.
All right, so that was Mr. Ikabongo Mwiya, Research Associate at PMRC.